Yo, welcome to Metal Matchups YouTube. Today, I'm going to be going over my perceived metagame for the Orlando Regional Championships. Orlando's going to be happening this weekend at the time of recording. I'm recording on, what is today, Tuesday, and the tournament's going to be on Saturday. So it's a couple days in advance, but this is what I think I would be expecting if I were going to run into in day one. So in 9 rounds of day one, I always kind of expect to hit like X number of this and X number of that when I'm deciding decks and techs and things like that. And since I'm not going, you have my full leaks idea of what the meta will look like and what decks you are likely to hit. Most common deck is probably going to be Lugia Archeops. I would expect to hit up to 2 to 3 of them. Lugia should start to see less play at Orlando, and I'm hoping this is the first time Lugia will hit like a 25% meta share at most, because Lugia's, obviously Lugia is a very good deck and it's still played, but it should be played less and less as other decks like Lost Zone decks specifically start to get fleshed out. So I'd expect to play 2 and 3 Lugias. They might be cutting the Bird Keepers. I don't think I'd be shocked if that happens, but I would expect them to have, and you can check out the podcast for sure. We had an Orlando meta discussion with some very good players, Israel Sosa, Darren O'Mara, and Luke Morsa. So check that out. I'll have that like linked somewhere in this video. But for more details, I'd expect Raikou, I'd expect Manaphy, probably Dunsparce as well in Lugia decks moving forward. And also Lugia players is the one thing, I think I said this in the podcast, but if I didn't, I think Lost City is a very good stadium in the deck and something you should definitely consider. Anyway, I think it's most played. I'd expect it 2 or 3 on day one. Mew VMAX, I'd expect only to hit the DTE version. I think most people have moved away from Fusion Strike, but I would not be shocked if your opponent is playing Fusion Strike. If your opponent flips over a Mew and you're going first, it is probably a good idea, especially in the early rounds or if you're in those middle tables, to still play around the turn 1 Meloetta in game 1 going blind into Mew, because it will be around. I don't expect it to see a ton of success. The Fusion Strike build is a little bit high rolly compared to the DTE build that feels a little more consistent and a little more, I don't know if powerful is the right word. I think it's literally less powerful, but it's more toolboxy. It's more, it can beat more stuff more consistently because you have Judge and Path and stuff like that. But Mew, I'd expect it 1 to 2 for sure. So pack the Drapions if applicable to your deck. Kyogre, don't bring the Drapion. Rayquaza, it's up to you. It might help you, right? Lugia, maybe you can bring it if you want to. Definitely bring the stadium bumps, because Mew beats Lugia very often by simply going like Path at some point and then you whiff and then it's game over. This is a weird one. This is my number 3. I've currently got Aggro Lost Box because I think there's 2 variants you're likely to run into, and I think they're the same players for both. So Lost Zone Rayquaza was the 3rd most played deck, right behind Mew and Lugia in San Diego, and I expect it to still be there, but I think some of the players are going to move towards a V and Sky Seal Stone focused variant of Lost Zone deck. So these are 2 different decks I have on the screen. I think Rayquaza is going to be the most common aggro Lost Box, but I do think a version with like Dragonite and Raikou and Drapion and Sky Seal Stone is going to see play. Will it see success? I hope so. I think it is a very cool version, but I think there's going to be a lot of mediocre lists because it's still new. And then whoever does well, it's going to be the new standard moving forward. But I would expect to see aggro, these like very aggressive OHKO Lost Zone decks for sure. And I'd expect it 1 to 2 of them. I would expect to be one of the most popular decks for sure. The next one down is, it says Lost Zone Kyogre. I don't know why it says that. This should say Lost Zone Goodra. The Goo was 2 of top 8. Stefan Ivanov got 2nd with it. I think Goodra being big and tanky is going to attract some people because we're in a very OHKO heavy format. And the Goo being big and tanky is going to dissuade some people, and people are going to stick with their aggro stuff because OHKOing stuff is fun. People tend to go for those decks, and also it's very good. Goodra says, I hope you can't OHKO me. And so sometimes you're like, well, yes, I can. GG's, right? But anyway, I would expect to hit 1 to 2 Lost Zone Goodras. I think this deck is going to see a fair amount of play. I don't think it's going to see a ton of success, though. I actually think we're going to see the worst Goodra performance in terms of day 1 to day 2 conversions out of Orlando. If you've been playing Goodra, I'm not saying don't play Goodra, but I'm saying if you haven't been playing Goodra, maybe think about it a little bit. Make sure that you've been practicing, because I think Goodra is deceptively difficult to play in that you can't mess up. If you mess up with this deck, you lose because you're so fragile in what you do. What you do is, here's a Goodra, good luck. A good deck, I'm a fan of it, but have an out to it. Be able to beat it for sure. The next one, this is the Lost Zone Kyogre. I'd expect to hit maybe one of them. Most people don't play Kyogre. And if you do hit a Kyogre, they're going to know what to do and steamroll you because you cannot get that proper testing of a good Kyogre player, or they're not going to know what to do and you're going to be fine, because if a Kyogre player struggles a little bit and you know to properly bench your Manaphy, things like that, you'll be totally fine and good to go. But Kyogre should still be around. The fact is Aqua Storm. The Aqua Storm is not designed to be used to its full effect. And the fact that this deck uses it to its full effect means that card's broken. The card's literally one of the most powerful cards ever created if you could do it consistently. And hey, guess what deck can do it consistently? Lost Zone Kyogre. So I expect that maybe one. It's very difficult to play. If you're at the top tables and your opponent is playing Lost Zone Kyogre, yeah, be afraid. If you have any friends or anything like that who are good at Lost Zone Kyogre who you can test against, I highly recommend it, especially if you have day 2 aspirations. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I keep getting, top 128s, I make it to day 2 and then flop. This is one of those decks that you're going to need to know how to beat a good player playing it to get a good record in the tournament. Arctura, I'd expect it like one of them. A lot of people, there's over 1,500 masters in the tournament. Arctura is straightforward. People think it's got some very good matchups. They play Lost City in their deck, and suddenly the Lost Zone Rayquaza matchup's a little bit better. If people aren't playing Sky Seal Stone, the deck is also in a pretty good spot. There's another reason I think the Sky Seal Stone version of Lost Zone is extra attractive. It improves the Lugia matchup, it improves the Arceus Duraludon matchup, it improves the Mew matchup, and those are 3 of the biggest decks in the format. So taking better matchups into those is good, but Arctura is going to say you're not going to play Sky Seal Stone in your Lost Box. You're going to play, I'm a big fan of Lost City. Check out the list that got top 16 in Liverpool. I think if you're going to play Arctura, that's probably one of the better lists to play. I personally also hate this deck, and I think it's incredibly boring to play because there's just like so little agency, but it is powerful when it does the thing. So if you're going to play Arctura, yeah, more power to you. Hope you can do the thing. If you can do the thing, you're going to have a good day. If you're playing against Arctura, know what their game plan against you is, and you'll be fine. Would it be worth teching against it? Maybe. 1 deck out of 9. Can you take 1 auto loss? Yes. But if you have a very simple tech you can add to your deck to make this matchup better, you should probably go for it, right? So I'd expect this to be right around here. Maybe hit one of them in day 1. Regis. I think Regis is going to be one of those decks that it'll be around. It's not going to be played in huge numbers, but it will see success. And the reason I think Regis will see success is because I think Regis is going to be played by people who play Regis. This is not a tournament to pick up Regis out of nowhere, but this is a tournament. If you know how to play Regis and you want to play Regis, I think you're in a good spot. You got pretty good matchups across the board. Lugia's got to start teching for some other stuff, and that helps out Regis a little bit. Another reason why I think Lost City is good in Lugia, helps their Reggie matchup, in addition to other matchups, helps Lost Zone decks and things like that, because they try and get cute and bench something so you can't Marnie them, and you're like, well, I'm going to Lost City it. But anyway, Regis, I think, is a solid play if you are a good Reggie player. Reggie is a fragile deck. I think every deck in the meta has answers, so simply being Regis isn't going to be in a good spot, but I would expect to hit into some Regis, so know the matchup for sure. Because it is such a fragile deck, I think you will be able to take down a fair amount of Regis without adding a ton of text to your list. Vikavolt Aerodactyl, I tweeted out, and I think that tweet kind of proved my point, even though people were trying to disprove my point. Vikavolt got second place at an NA regional, and then it got first at the next one. And I said, is this the least respected, successful deck of all time? And everyone's like, bro, that deck sucks. Like, it's not unrespected, it's just bad. And I think that just proves the point of the deck keeps making finals of NA regionals, and everyone still says the deck sucks. Because of that, I don't think people are going to play it. But some will, and you will see at least one Vikavolt in the top tables day 1, day 2. Paralyzing Bolt is incredibly good. Lost Zone players, it is worth testing the matchup. Know your outs. If you expect to be successful at Orlando Regionals, I would be ready to beat Vikavolt. Vikavolt, Reggie, Arctura, these are matchups you just need to know. Are you going to hit them a lot? No. Is it worth teching? Debatable. It depends on the matchups you think your deck has. Does the tech help in other matchups? Things like that. But these are decks that I would definitely know the matchups and be prepared for. And the last one's control. There's just too many people I would not tech for control unless that tech has other utility, of course. That's the big thing, right? Like if you have a tech that's like good against control, but it's really good against like Gudra, I don't know what that tech would possibly be. But if you have a tech that's good for something Gudra that I think is going to be all over the place and it's good for control, yeah, it's a good tech, right? You should definitely play it. But I don't expect a ton of control, but don't be shocked if you hit one during day one. I think Sander gave us the new best version of control, which is with the Flying Pikachu and the Thornton. A deck is incredibly powerful, but the deck keeps getting harder and harder to play, which is generally a positive thing. If control is too like easy to play, then it's too powerful and there's not much you can do against it. But when it's hard to play like this one is, I think there are techs, there's ways to outplay and things like that. And so it is pretty healthy in this current format. But would you expect to hit control? Maybe. I would personally be prepped for control. So again, where we're at here, Lugia, Archeops, Mew, and all the Lost Zone variants, if you have techs for these matchups, I would probably include them. You are likely to hit mostly these decks in a 9-round day one. Then we get down to the Arctura, Reggie, Vikavolt, and Control. I expect these decks to be around. I would not be shocked if you hit them. I would be versed in the matchup. I would have a game plan. I would be ready to go. Anything I didn't list, I would personally not expect to hit. Will some of you listen to this if we're watching this, hit Zoroark V-Star? Yes. Will you hit Giratina V-Star? Sure. Why not? Will you hit Shadow Rider VMAX? God, maybe you shouldn't, but maybe you will. I don't know. Sometimes there's just random stuff. With 1,500 people, you're going to hit random stuff, especially if you start off like 001 or you start off 01 or heck, you're like 111. These random, you're going to hit some weird stuff. But once you start to normalize and you start to climb up the ladder, you're 311, you're 40, these like really positive records, I would expect these decks to start to differentiate themselves and I would be prepared for them. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. This is also more digestible than the full meta discussion, but you should also listen to that if you have time. It's very good, and we go into detail about all of these things a little bit more. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that other YouTube stuff, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out.